Hey folks, I know it's been a while since I posted my last video, but I'm gonna kind of finish up what's been going on. So, last video I was waiting on my appointments with the VA to go over all my conditions and have them assess them and provide a percentage. So, turns out all those appointments aren't through the VA themselves, they're through some clinic or hospital that handles all disability claims. So, they sent me to a hospital in Philadelphia, and the hospital itself was dirty, the people were sketchy, but the people that worked there were all really nice and helpful. So they send you through every specialist that would be affected by anything you listed in your paperwork when you met with your VA rep at the base. So anything you list, whether it's related to cardiology, psychology, audiology, general medical stuff, they will send you to a specialist. So I saw quite a few doctors, talked to them about quite a few different things, and I think my last appointment was in January, and my results came back in March. So it took a while, but it happened. I ended up having to use my car, pay for all the tolls, pay for all the parking, and I didn't get any reimbursement for it. Supposedly, they were supposed to reimburse me, but at no point did anyone give me anything or have me fill anything out for reimbursement. I asked about it. My Pueblo told me, yep, I'll send you this. You'll be able to fill this out and we'll get you reimbursed for everything you had to pay for. They didn't send me any of that. So, kind of on my own, not doing much of anything. And that's about $100 that I just ate in cost to get this all taken care of. So, once you get your results back, you get a phone call from the Pueblo. You have to go sit down and talk to them, and they will talk to you about what the results were. They'll give you what the VA percentage was, as well as the decisions for the installation evaluation board, and they'll let you know what their decision was, whether it was retain, discharge, or retire, or temporary retirement. So in my case, they initially offered me, I think it was 70% from the VA with a permanent retirement from the Air Force. I had 3 or 5 days, calendar days, to respond back with an answer on whether I was going to accept it or push for something extra. So I reached out to the Air Force legal office out of San Antonio that handles all the med board cases. And it took them about a day to get back to me, but once they did, they assigned me a lawyer who initially told me just take the offer because I'm not going to get anything better than what I've got. The percentage is going to be what it's going to be, and if they do make a decision based off of whether to retire me or not, they're going to change it from a permanent retirement to a temporary retirement, and in 12 months they'll reverse it and make it just a general discharge. So you should just take what you've got. I wasn't a fan of that answer. I didn't like it at all. But luckily or unluckily for him, that lawyer ended up getting injured and was out of office for a while. So while he was out, they reassigned me another lawyer. And that one actually said, yep, we can fight this. We can get you something else. You just got to let me know what you got to do. If you do want to turn it over and get a return to duty, you have to have a signed letter from your commander, as well as the doctor who diagnosed you with the unfitting condition, stating that you are able to return to duty and that there is no impact to the work. My doctor had already told me that it was pretty much a done deal from his side. He wasn't planning to have me return to duty, and my commander used some very choice words that would be very difficult for him to come back from. So even though I talked to him about possibly writing a letter, he didn't seem very enthusiastic about it. So I just talked to some friends and decided to go for an increase in the VA rating, because what you can do when the results come back initially is you can accept them as they are, deny them, and go for a board down in San Antonio, and have them determine whether or not you can stay in or just a general discharge or a temporary retirement or a permanent retirement. So they'll do an entirely new board down there, and you'll have to go down with them. Otherwise, you'll just need to phone call in because you do have to be a part of that board. Or you can have people write letters on your behalf, as well as you write letters to have your VA percentage increased. So I ended up having some friends of mine, some very close friends, write letters to show a better picture of what it is my condition's been doing to me and how it's affected my relationships and my day-to-day life, which came in handy because once I submitted all the letters, I even got one from my doctor for it, and it took about a month to get the results, but it gave me a 20% increase, so I went from being 70% to 90%, which is a pretty good jump as far as I'm concerned. But overall, it would have been nice to stay, but if the doctor is already saying that they're not going to change their mind, there's no point really fighting it as far as I'm concerned. But the decision coming back for the 90% to getting my retirement date was only about a week or two. So I ended up getting my retirement orders before I got my out processing checklist or anything else. So that was my first official notification of me being done, was getting my orders, which it was not simple trying to find those things. They don't load them to the virtual MPF. They load them to your Prada account. And no one tells you that. You have to kind of ask them or research it yourself. And then it's a pain working with MPF to have them put in all of your checklist information. So that was a struggle. They ask you to do something that is virtually impossible to find because it's not loaded on virtual like they say it is. It's loaded on MyPers. So I had some very difficult struggles with my MPS. It was just one headache after another. The person they had assigned to my case was not helpful. She didn't really seem to know what she was doing. She was kind of rude. But the Pueblos were very smart. They were very on top of it. And speaking of that, I know in my last video I told you that my research said you can't make X amount of money and still receive your disability, so you have to choose between getting a decent job and getting your disability paycheck. Turns out that is not the case. So even though the VA websites and the government websites all say that you need to make under a certain amount to still receive your benefits as someone who's disabled, that is not the case. I don't know if it's because the VA disability is different from a general disability claim, but my Pueblo is 100% disabled, and he is working as a contractor and makes more than what they quoted as being the required maximum annual salary for someone with a disability to receive their disability checks. So obviously the VA sites and the government sites are all wrong, or it just doesn't apply to VA claims. So whichever it is, not entirely sure, but it was really good to hear that my salary won't be capped out just because of a disability that came up. So from me getting my retirement date, I think I ended up getting the notice April 12th or April 15th. It was either a Friday or a Monday. I had 2 weeks to out process and get out the door. So I got that notice the 12th or the 15th. My final out date was April 30th. My retirement date isn't until the 28th of July. So I've still got a little bit of time. So I'm just kind of on terminal leave, making money, trying to find a job. It's a little frustrating, a little irritating, especially since they make you go through the TAP program, the Transition Assistance Program, which is supposed to set you up, and they have a lot of really good information in there, but they cram so much into 1 week that it's really difficult to remember anything. And I've got the books that they gave me while I was there, and I'm still struggling to figure out what some of the stuff that they told us was, because it was just so much at one point, and just drinking from a fire hose, we'll put it that way. That's exactly what it was. Not to mention, they have you build a resume, they have you do a budget, and they look at it, but no one actually looks at it. They just check to make sure that it's done. They don't actually look to see if it's feasible. They don't check to see if your resume is actually written well. They just take a look to make sure that it's done, and then they push you out the door. Which, as far as I'm concerned, is a really hard foul, because they're not setting us up for success. They're just putting us through the motions because they're mandated to by the government. So, Department of Labor, you're failing on that end. But anyway, your Pebble is going to be a really good resource for everything that you get questions for, because most of them, from what I've seen, are previous military, so they have a really good understanding of how the process works. But other than that, there's no other really good resource other than someone who's been through the process already. So if you guys have any questions, you can let me know, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. I might even make a video for it, so that way if anyone else has those same questions, we can just get it out there for everyone to see and call it a day. But overall, the process was fairly quick. Mine started in, I want to say, November, and final decision with retirement orders were in hand by April. So less than a year. I know Guard and Reserves, it's a little different. They will take their time, and I think that boils down to funding. Because when you're going through the process, as active duty, they're still paying you. Obviously, they want to try to save money, so the faster they can get your process through, the better for them. Whereas if you're Guard or Reserves, they're not paying you constantly like they are with active duty. So there's actually a reservist here at my base that's been going through a review board for 2 years, and there doesn't seem to be any progress going with it. So it seems like because they're not paying her regularly to do her time, that they're really concerned about getting her review board all finished, which is kind of frustrating, especially for her, I'm sure, because she's got all this stuff going on, but no one's taking it very seriously, which is really frustrating. So Guard and Reserves really need to step up their game with how this stuff all works, because they're not taking care of their people at all. But yeah, if anyone has any questions, give me a shout. I'll help you out as best as I can. I will give you all the information I've got. But until then, see you on the other side.